When Whitney Houston looked Clive Davis dead in the eye and said, "I'm recording this song whether you like it or not," the most powerful man in music went completely silent. For 13 years, he had controlled every single decision of her career. Every song, every album, every move had been his call. But on that cold February morning in 1992, something in Whitney's voice told him she wasn't asking for permission anymore. What happened in the next 4 minutes and 31 seconds would either destroy everything they'd built together or prove that her voice was more powerful than his vision. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because what you're about to discover will change how you think about artistic freedom and the price of following your heart. The tension in Clive Davis's corner office at Arista Records was thick. Whitney sat across from the man who had discovered her in a New York nightclub 9 years earlier, clutching a demo tape that could make or break their relationship forever. Behind his massive mahogany desk hung platinum albums from every major artist he'd developed: Barry Manilow, Aretha Franklin, and Whitney herself. 3 Grammy Awards, 4 consecutive #1 singles, and over 50 million albums sold worldwide. All built on his vision, his decisions, his absolute control. But Whitney Elizabeth Houston was tired of being controlled. "Play the song," Clive said, his manicured fingers drumming impatiently on the leather desk pad. He had no idea what he was about to hear would challenge everything he believed about commercial music. Whitney pressed play on the small cassette recorder with trembling hands, and Dolly Parton's 1974 country ballad, "I Will Always Love You," filled the room. But this wasn't Dolly's gentle acoustic version. This was something completely different, something dangerous. Whitney had taken that simple country song and transformed it into a gospel-powered declaration of independence that showcased every single octave of her legendary 4-octave range. It started as a whisper, intimate and vulnerable, building slowly through verses before exploding into a climax that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. But what Clive said next would shake Whitney to her core. "Absolutely not." His voice was ice cold. "This will destroy everything we've built together." The words hit Whitney like a physical blow. She had expected resistance, but the flatness of his rejection left her speechless. For a moment, the only sound in the office was the gentle hum of the air conditioning and the distant noise of New York traffic 40 floors below. Whitney's hands began to tremble as the reality sank in. The man who had shaped her entire career, who had made her the biggest female recording artist in the world, was telling her that her artistic instincts were completely wrong. "Clive, if you just listen to how the bridge works into the final chorus—" "I don't need to listen again," he interrupted sharply, standing up and walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. "Whitney, do you understand why you're successful? We've been very careful about your image, your sound, your brand. We've positioned you as sophisticated, elegant, accessible to everyone. This," he gestured dismissively at the tape recorder, "this is too raw, too gospel, too black." Those last 2 words hung in the air like a slap across the face. Whitney felt anger rising in her chest like a tide. "Too black? What the hell does that mean, Clive?" He turned to face her, his expression cold and calculating. "It means that your crossover appeal is what makes you valuable to this company. The suburban moms who buy your albums in Target stores, the middle America radio stations that play your songs during drive time. They're buying Whitney Houston, the classy pop star. They're not buying some gospel belter who sounds like she belongs in a church choir in Newark." "That's exactly who I am," Whitney said quietly. "I am a gospel singer from a church in Newark. That's where my voice came from. That's where my power comes from." Clive's response was brutal. "Your voice came from Sissy Houston and God-given talent. Your career came from me and the careful decisions I've made to package that talent in a way that the widest possible audience can consume. Don't confuse the two, Whitney." But that's when Whitney made a decision that would change everything. She stood up slowly, her hands no longer trembling. Something had shifted in her posture, in her voice, in her entire presence. The girl who had always sought approval was transforming into a woman who knew exactly what she wanted. "I'm recording the song." Clive's eyes widened in shock. In their entire 9-year professional relationship, Whitney had never directly contradicted him. She had been the perfect student, the ideal artist, talented, beautiful, and completely willing to follow his direction. Excuse me? I'm recording I Will Always Love You for the Bodyguard soundtrack with the arrangement I created. I'm telling you this out of respect, but I'm not asking for permission. The air became electric with tension. Clive walked back to his desk and sat down heavily, his face flushed with anger and disbelief. Whitney, if you defy me on this, there will be consequences. I can't stop you from recording for the movie soundtrack, but I control what gets released through Arista Records. I control your album releases, your radio promotion, your entire music career. Then I guess we'll find out what happens when a song gets released just through the movie, Whitney replied, her voice steady as steel. Because I'm doing this, Clive, with or without your support. What happened next revealed just how deep the power struggle had become. Clive picked up the phone with deliberate slowness. Get legal on the line immediately. I want to review Whitney's contract, specifically the sections dealing with soundtrack contributions. Whitney stood up. You're threatening me with lawyers? After everything we built together? I'm protecting an investment, Clive said coldly. You seem to forget that Arista Records has spent millions developing your career. You don't get to throw that away on some vanity project. This isn't a vanity project. Whitney's voice rose. This is me finally using my voice the way it was meant to be used. This is me making a decision about my own artistry instead of just being your beautiful, profitable puppet. The words hung in the air like an accusation that couldn't be taken back. The meeting ended with both of them angry. As Whitney walked toward the door, Clive made his final threat clear. If she recorded the song, he would do everything in his power to minimize its impact. No radio promotion, no music video budget, nothing that would normally accompany a Whitney Houston release. Whitney walked out knowing she had blown up the most important professional relationship of her life. But she also felt something she hadn't experienced in years. She felt free. What happened in that recording studio was nothing short of magic. 3 days later, Whitney walked into the recording studio carrying all the emotion of the previous weeks. The frustration with Clive, the pain of her deteriorating marriage to Bobby Brown, the anger of being controlled for so long, and underneath it all, the pure joy of finally being allowed to sing with complete freedom. The studio was legendary, having hosted recording sessions for some of music history's most important albums. Located on West 54th Street in Manhattan, it was equipped with state-of-the-art technology and had seen everyone from Frank Sinatra to Michael Jackson create their masterpieces within its walls. But on this particular day, there was unusual tension in the air. David Foster, the legendary producer who had worked with everyone from Celine Dion to Barbra Streisand, was visibly nervous about his role in what everyone was calling Whitney's rebellion against the most powerful man in music. The session musicians, all seasoned professionals who had played on countless hit records, were professional but cautious, fully aware they were participating in something that could either be brilliant or career-ending. Let's do this in one take, Whitney announced through the studio's sophisticated intercom system, her voice carrying a determination that surprised everyone present. I don't want to overthink it or calculate it or try to make it safe. I just want to feel it and let whatever wants to come out, come out. What happened over the next 4 minutes and 31 seconds would become legendary. Whitney started the song almost whispering, her voice intimate and vulnerable in a way that radio-friendly Whitney had never been allowed to sound. She lingered on the opening lines with emotional nakedness that made everyone in the control room hold their breath. Then came the bridge, and something magical happened. This wasn't pop music anymore. This was a spiritual experience. A woman using her voice to declare her independence, her pain, and her strength. And then came the final chorus. Whitney opened her voice completely, letting loose the full gospel power she had been taught to restrain. The note she hit on I in the final, "And I will always love you," seemed to go on forever, a sustained moment that made David Foster stand up from the mixing board in shock. When the song ended, there was complete silence. Then Whitney's voice came through the intercom, small and uncertain. Was that okay? Should we do another take? Foster pressed the button to respond, his voice shaking. Whitney, That was the most extraordinary vocal performance I've ever witnessed in 30 years of making records. We're not doing another take. That was perfect. Whitney came out of the vocal booth with tears streaming down her face. I've never sung like that before. I've never been allowed to. Well, Foster replied, you just changed music history. Clive is going to lose his mind when he hears this. Good, Whitney said with a small smile. It's about time. The phone call that followed tested their relationship forever. When Clive first heard the finished recording, his reaction was everything Whitney expected. According to people present, he listened in complete silence, then played it again immediately. After the second listen, he called Whitney for an hour-long conversation, explaining why the song would be a commercial disaster. You've recorded a 4.5-minute gospel ballad based on a country song from 1974, he told her. Radio won't play it because it's too long. Pop audiences won't understand it. R&B audiences won't connect with it. You've created something that falls between every market demographic. But Whitney remained firm. The Bodyguard soundtrack was released in November 1992, and true to his word, Clive provided zero promotional support. No radio campaign, no music video, nothing that would normally accompany a Whitney Houston release. The song was simply included on the soundtrack and released to theaters. But the real shock came when the song hit the charts. The song exploded organically, spreading through word of mouth and radio stations playing it due to listener demand rather than label promotion. I Will Always Love You entered the Billboard Hot 100 at number 47, despite having no promotional campaign. The following week, it jumped to number 11. The week after that, it hit number 1, where it would remain for 14 consecutive weeks, becoming one of the longest-running number 1 singles in history. The power of Whitney's performance was undeniable. This wasn't a calculated pop hit designed in corporate boardrooms. This was raw talent and pure emotion, breaking through every commercial barrier that had been carefully constructed around her artistry. Radio stations that normally wouldn't play a 4-minute ballad made exceptions because listeners demanded it with an intensity that program directors had rarely experienced. The song crossed every demographic boundary Clive had worried about. Pop stations, R&B stations, adult contemporary, even country stations played it because audiences responded to its authenticity. What Clive never expected was happening before his eyes. The success forced Clive to make a choice. He could continue withholding support and look foolish, or get behind it and take credit. Being Clive Davis, he chose the latter. Within a month, Arista rushed out a music video and launched a full promotional campaign. Clive began telling interviewers he had known the song would be special from the beginning. Whitney, in interviews, was diplomatic but firm. Clive has been an incredible mentor, but I Will Always Love You was something I had to fight for. It represents me trusting my artistic instincts. The numbers were staggering. The song became the best-selling single by a female artist in history, selling over 20 million copies worldwide. The Bodyguard soundtrack became the best-selling soundtrack ever, moving 45 million copies globally. But more important was what the song represented: proof that authentic artistry could achieve massive commercial success, that audiences were hungry for real emotion over calculated pop. The song changed the landscape for other artists, particularly women of color. Whitney proved you didn't have to choose between success and authenticity. When Beyoncé fought for creative control, when Adele insisted on recording Skyfall, they cited Whitney's stand as inspiration. But the cost of victory was steep. Whitney's relationship with Clive never fully recovered. After tasting creative freedom, she couldn't be managed the same way. Some believe this awakened a refusal to be controlled that extended beyond music into her personal life. The irony is that the song representing Whitney choosing herself also marked the beginning of losing control of everything else. Her marriage deteriorated, her struggles intensified, and the confidence to assert herself creatively didn't come with tools to handle other pressures. Clive later admitted he was wrong. In his 2013 memoir, he wrote, "Whitney's instincts about that song were right and mine were wrong. It's one of the few times an artist's vision proved superior to my own." When Whitney died in 2012 at just 48 years old, Clive spoke with genuine emotion and obvious grief. "She was my greatest discovery and my greatest heartbreak. I tried to protect her, sometimes from herself, The question that haunts everyone is whether things could have been different. If Clive had supported her vision from the beginning, would she have developed better instincts about other areas? These questions have no answers. What we're left with is the music, and particularly the song that represents both Whitney's greatest triumph and the moment she chose to stop being controlled. Every time I Will Always Love You plays, we hear someone choosing themselves over powerful expectations. This story reminds us that the most important battles are for the right to be ourselves. Whitney's stand wasn't about a song, it was about autonomy, dignity, and using her gift the way she knew was right. The song Clive said would end her career became her signature and proof that authentic artistry can achieve extraordinary success. But the woman who fought for it paid a heavy price. As we remember Whitney Houston today, we should celebrate both her incredible talent and her courage to finally choose herself, even when the most powerful forces in the music industry told her she was making a mistake. Her story teaches us that sometimes breaking free from control comes at tremendous personal cost, but also that authentic artistry has the power to touch millions of lives in ways that calculated commercial music never can. The relationship between mentor and artist is complicated, often painful, and sometimes destructive, even when it comes from genuine care and love. Clive had tried to protect Whitney by carefully controlling her choices. Whitney tried to save herself by breaking free. Neither approach prevented the tragedy that would unfold. But I Will Always Love You stands as a powerful testament to what happens when artists trust their instincts despite overwhelming pressure. It proves audiences embrace complexity and raw emotion over packaged products designed by committee. The legacy of Whitney's one act of defiance continues to inspire artists today. When young singers are told to compromise their vision for commercial success, when record labels try to shape artists into safe, marketable products, Whitney's story serves as both inspiration and warning. Trust your instincts, fight for your vision, but understand that creative freedom comes with responsibility. Dolly Parton, who wrote the original song, perfectly captured the essence of Whitney's achievement. She took my little country song and turned it into something epic, and you can hear her fighting for it in every note she sings. That fighting spirit, that refusal to be diminished, that commitment to artistic truth, these are the qualities that made I Will Always Love You more than just a hit song. They made it a cultural milestone. Today, when we hear those opening notes, we're transported back to that recording studio where a woman finally found her voice. We hear the sound of someone choosing authenticity over safety, passion over calculation, truth over commercial appeal. We hear Whitney Houston at the absolute peak of her powers, singing with complete freedom and devastating honesty. The song that Clive Davis said would destroy Whitney's career instead became the foundation for understanding that the most powerful art comes from the deepest truth. It showed the world that sometimes the greatest risk an artist can take is being completely, unapologetically themselves. What would you sacrifice to stay true to your creative vision? How far would you go to protect your artistic integrity? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story inspired you to think about the balance between commercial success and artistic authenticity, hit that like button and share it with an artist who needs to hear this message. Subscribe and ring notification bell because we have more stories that reveal the hidden battles behind music's greatest moments and the courage it takes to create art on your own terms.